There we go. We're live.
All right.
Woohoo!
Cool.
Arr! Happy Pirates Day, everybody.
Yarg.
I don't hear you.
Our
Yarg.
You can tell the folks on the West Coast have just woken up, but Ruth, come on, you're based in London. We expect a little more hearty R from you.
R.
We're going to have to work on that one. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for our first WIP Smackdown. And as we mentioned on the information going out, we just wanted to make sure that it was short and snappy and have some really hot topics that we can talk about with some really, really great speakers. And it is national or international, I guess, Speak Like a Pirate Day. And you know, I'm not going. I'll try and speak like a pirate for you today, lads and lassies, but I'm not sure how good of a job I'm going to be doing.
Wow, that's pretty good, actually.
yeah, that's really good.
Thank you. So first off, just a couple of housekeeping. So we've got 30 minutes for the Smackdown. Our topic is the app economy dead? So that ought to be interesting. But first off, we've got some tickets to give away. Woohoo! So thanks to Samsung, who's sponsoring our Smackdown today. They have got their SDC, the Samsung Developer Conference, coming up. Have to do a little hold up there. It's November 11th to 13th at the Moscone in San Francisco. And for those of you who actually signed up on Eventbrite, we did a draw for a ticket, and the winner of the one winning ticket to SDC is, hope you're watching, Roland Schmidt. So Sam will get in touch with you to let you know how to collect your ticket. And for those of you who are joining, I have to put this one down too. I have a few props for today. Rumor has it that everybody goes to SDC, gets a device. I'm not at liberty to tell you what that is. So it should be a good event. Thanks, Samsung, for sponsoring us. If you are on with us here. And what we're going to do is take questions, I guess, either via the Google Plus, and Sam, who's over in New York, is going to help moderate that, or send to Twitter to WIP Smackdown. If you've got any questions for us today, let us know. And what we're going to do at the end of the show is we're going to pick some of the best questions, and then one of you will win another ticket to SDC. And Sam, I know you're just chatting with me, but I thought you had another prize we wanted to give out. Is that so? Yeah, are you going to give that one away, Sam? Is that a yes? I see a little happy face over there. All right, so we've actually got a pass and a surprise to give away. So you'll have to wait till the end of the show. Woohoo! So we've seen a lot of the press lately, and probably a lot of the press that's maybe a little less tech than we are saying, is the app economy dead? I mean, what do we really mean by that? Does it mean that people aren't buying apps anymore, or I mean, we always talk about developers not making enough money, but what I'm going to do is turn it over to our hearty crew members here and introduce them and give them a chance to tell us what they think about is the app economy dead or not. So I'm going to start off with Pirate Raj Singh over at Tempo.io, and he can tell us what he thinks about all this. Raj.
Yeah, sure. So Raj, CEO of Tempo.ai, we do a smart calendar. I've worked in a variety of different categories in the last 10 years. Some of those categories have been incredibly painful to make money, but fantastic ways to maybe get lots of users. And of course, the goal is at some point, can you figure out a way to make real money? I think it'd be foolish to say the app economy is dead, because there are dozens of mobile-first companies making tons of money. But there are also dozens of mobile-first companies that haven't really shown that they can make tons of money, and even with large user bases. So I guess my comment response would be definitely not dead, but certainly some business models are less in vogue. Maybe like one-time paid or in-app advertising seems to be declining a little bit. And then separately, there are some categories which I think are really, really tough. For example, gaming. Certainly in a hit-driven world, you can make a ton of money, but as the independent game developer, it can be really, really hard. So I think it depends on the category, and I think it depends on the model. But I will reiterate, and it was to a comment that you said earlier, what works this year won't work next year. What works next year won't work the year after. I look at previous apps that I've gotten to #1 in their category, and those tricks and techniques that I applied then won't work today.
So anybody who's yellow-bellied won't make it in this industry. Is that what you're really trying to say, Pirate Raj?
I'm trying to say that what I have generally found is either you get lucky or you have some unfair advantage.
Interesting. Hopefully you've got a bit of both.
Hope so.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next guest. And just a note that Raj is based down in Silicon Valley, kind of Mountain View area. And Robi Ganguly, I never do say your last name. I usually just always say your first name. Based in Seattle, so close to me here in Vancouver. And you're a bit of a mover and shaker in the industry and see a lot of things that are going on too. So not your regular scallywag over in Seattle. What do you think about the app economy? Is it dead?
Well, I don't think so. So it's what we do. We help a lot of app publishers around the globe talk with their customers, create customer relationships inside their apps. And so we get to see a lot of different data and learn from a lot of people. And when I think about the app economy, I think one of the unfortunate parts of press and journalism is that people focus on apps that are purchased and then in-app purchases and advertising. And the reality is that's a really small piece of what's happening with apps. So companies like Uber are generating billions of dollars of revenue every year through an app, right? Fundamentally, that is about an app business, but that is not reported in terms of thinking about what the opportunity is. So I like to caution people to not read too much into the press and think much more about the long-term opportunity to connect with mobile consumers and look at what you can do to make consumers' lives easier, to sell more to them more effectively in a more convenient manner. And a great example of a company that really is adopting this and doing this well is Starbucks. Right? So Starbucks has been around for 3 decades, has a tremendous global business, and their app is fundamentally about 4 years old, and they are generating millions of dollars of revenue every day through their app because people are purchasing their coffee more conveniently and effectively. And that's a big piece of the app business that doesn't get much attention. So I don't think the app economy is anything other than growing in massive, massive ways.
Interesting. That's a really good viewpoint. And so now we're going to skip all the way across the pond over to London, where we've got Ruth Barnett from Swiftkey, and really interested in hearing your thoughts. And I know Swiftkey's had a big week this week, so we're glad that you could join us. I can't believe you're drinking tea and not beer at this hour in London, not on the West Coast.
It's always it's great to be here, especially in a week like this week where Swiftkey's launched its keyboard app for iPhones and iPads. And I think maybe we can be a case study of why the app economy is not dead. We're currently at #1 in the US and the UK. We've announced that we had 1 million downloads within 22 hours of launching this app on Wednesday night. I think that suggests that there's still a pretty healthy audience out there who want to get their hands on good quality products. And so for those who don't know, Swiftkey makes the apps on Android and iPhone that enable you to type more easily. We use artificial intelligence to learn from the way that you write so that we can autocorrect and predict your next word. But I think that we have learned that you have to adapt and you have to evolve. And to Raj's point, nothing stays still in this industry. Right now, we're in a really healthy place. But as a company, we have made changes in order to try and stay ahead of the curve. So when we launched as an Android app in 2010, we were a paid app, a one-time payment app. And then in June this year, we switched to being a freemium app because we recognized that the market had changed and that was not the same model that we felt was going to last in the long term. And we wanted to focus really on the user base. So I would say that it's a really healthy place to be right now. Here in Europe, the tech scene is having a really interesting, vibrant time. We're really growing, and we hope we can come compete with more of you guys. But you have to stay innovative.
Yeah, makes sense. So I just want to remind anybody, if you've got any questions, just send Twitter to hashtag WIP Smackdown if you've got any questions for us. But I think you guys have brought up some really interesting yet a bit, sort of controversial things. I mean, Robi, you're saying that, yeah, it's not dead because take a look at apps like Uber. But I mean, between Uber and Starbucks, those are really, really huge companies that, they've got the money and the time to put into having some great apps. But, what does that mean for the little guy? Does it only mean that really these big corporates can make it happen? Anybody want to take that one?
Well, so I'll jump in, and then I'm curious about other people's opinion. But Uber is not that old of a company, right? It's only been around about 4 or 5 years, and people will talk now about how successful it is. But when it was first launched as an idea, a lot of people thought it was sort of crazy, and it just turned out that the thing they were playing on was that a one-button experience, just a push, and here comes the car, and it's super convenient, would make so many people's lives easier that there's real market opportunity there. And I think that is key to understanding some of the opportunities in the mobile space, that you can make people's lives a lot easier, and you can come out of nowhere, essentially, and change the rules. And that's, sure, you might discount that and say, well, they already hit on that idea, and we're going to not be able to go compete in that same arena. But then you see that there are other companies popping up all over the globe that are actually trying to attack the market in different ways, right? Lyft has a different take on doing this. Sidecar has a different take on doing this. There are several taxi companies in China that are essentially trying to go do things like this. So we're still really early just in that transportation market. And if you're an independent developer, if you're somebody small, you don't have to tackle the transportation market to find really meaningful opportunities. You could be thinking about the new ways to order food. I mean, I think this week alone I saw 2 different interesting food-oriented startups that are all focused on mobile that sound like they've already got meaningful traction in their own markets.
But isn't that part of the problem right there? I mean, you're saying, well, Uber's done this, but now there's more transportation apps and there's a lot of food apps. I mean, isn't part of the problem that developers just start doing the same thing, and then you really water down any of the other competitors that are out there, because it's just the same old thing? When are we going to get something new and different?
So my comment would be, at least with respect to is the app economy dead, the innovation is not so much in the products anymore, it's in the business model. So you're seeing people come up with some really clever ways to monetize, even the transition from, let's say, in the gaming world, for example, from paid apps to free-to-play with in-app purchase, and even that's going through a little bit of a shakeup where they're playing with combinations of freemium with interstitials plus in-app purchase plus maybe a cloud component where there's a subscription as well. So the innovation in the business model is what I think is the real interesting piece. And when I think of Uber, I think of that as a business model innovation. Just the notion of Uberifying things in the way they've done, and the range of the whole category that's spun out of that. And that's where you're going to see rampant copying, because people are always going to follow the money.
Or follow what's cool, I guess.
I think that's a really valuable point, but I think at Swiftkey we think staying a clever product is actually also going to be the key to our success. And I think, to your point, it depends in which kind of sector you're in and what your service is. But when Swiftkey arrived in 2010 to try and revolutionize typing, I don't think that it walked into a marketplace that thought this was going to be a hit. No one else was really doing it in the way that we were doing it. And when this company started out, it was the very definition of the little guy. It was 2 friends who met at university who started to realize there was a trend towards mobile typing over PC typing, and that no one had really started from scratch and seeing that as a different kind of problem. It wasn't a typing problem, it was a language problem. And actually, we're now not quite the little guy. We've got 160 staff. We've got 3 offices worldwide, including San Francisco and Seoul. And that's really, really proud journey for us. I think there is still an opportunity for the little guy. I think there's lots more we can do in each of our markets, be that around access to finance, be that around the skills debate, and be that around access to mentorship and guidance in the industry about how to make those transitions and how to look at the business model questions and stay ahead of that. But I still think the little guy can win.
I would add, in the context of Swiftkey and in connection with the business model innovation, I remember meeting them when they were 2 people in 2010, and they were crazy to think that you could charge for a keyboard on Android in 2010. Nobody was really doing paid apps. Android was a terrible path for. There was no Google Wallet, so there was really no credit card. This stuff was still in progress. With some operators, you had to pay through Operator. It wasn't even through the App Store, and so they implemented that model and it worked. And that, in some ways, gave them the cash to then continue to innovate and push forward to then move to the cloud model that they have now.
I think it's a really good point. When Swiftkey entered the Android market, it was such a smaller percentage of market share, and John and Ben, the founders, backed the right horse with that. We became the biggest selling paid app for 2013 and 2012 globally, and I think that has enabled us, given us the freedom to breathe, and given us the space to innovate. And that's one reason why, when we took the switch to go free, that was in trying to do the same thing again, anticipating where the market's going to go.
There's a question that's come up it's kind of similar to what I was going to ask too, in terms of verticals. And again, Robi, you're saying that, well, you've got to touch on what the consumers are looking for, and that's coming from, like Starbucks, who's a retailer. But Raj, I mean, you're clearly in enterprise space, aren't you? So, I mean, when you take a look at different verticals, we talked a bit about gaming. How do you think they really differ in terms of where the opportunities are, or where there's no more opportunities for apps anymore?
I can go. I think they're absolutely different. So in my previous life, I was doing recipes, an app called All the Cooks, and featured it. By the way, featured in the Android market in 2010, 100,000 installs a day. Today, it's like 2,000 installs a day. So it is a very different app economy today for the new indie. But that being said, when if you have a recipe app, your monetization paths are limited. There's a lot of free content out there. You're kind of in the category of just content. It's like a news app or a news reader. And so for the most part, it's an advertising-supported model. And the problem is those that know advertising know that the top 10 or 20 publishers like ESPN, etc., take the majority of the mobile ad revenue because they're the ones that drive the vast majority of the page views. And so it's really hard to make. And again, we have to define what app economy means to the independent. Is it a salary, or is it like a business? Like, hey, I want to make millions of dollars a year. Certainly, if you want to make a few $100,000 a year, fine. But if you're trying to make millions of dollars a year, it's really, really hard. If you're in the news category today, really, really hard. I mean, I don't know how, unless you are multi-platform, big existing brand coming mobile, you can make millions of dollars a year. That being said, there is continued business model innovation. We have, I'm blanking on the recent new startup, but trying a subscription model. Which is a different model, hasn't really been done too much within that category. So I think that's the interesting thing, is how people are playing with different ways to monetize in different categories that maybe were done before in other categories, or innovate, or trying to create other hooks to get people to pay.
And Robi, what are you seeing in some of the different verticals?
In general, big players in software across verticals are terrified of mobile. Right, you can look across lots of different categories of enterprise software, whether you're talking about travel and expense, you're talking about CRM, you're talking about ERP, that are being shifted pretty dramatically because the knowledge workers, the employees at these companies, are starting to adopt mobile apps that are homegrown, that are helping them do things. So there's this company called Expensify, and if you haven't heard of Expensify, it's a super easy way to handle travel and expenses, and their mobile app is so simple that it's gotten massive adoption, right? That's one example of an upheaval in the opportunities, because as consumers of mobile apps ourselves, we also are employees at companies too, and we start shifting decisions that happen inside of companies. And I think the thing that people often focus on way too much when they talk about the app economy and whether or not it's dead is that they think that software is sold. And the reality is that software today is as much a media business as the news is. It's about attention. And if you can get people's attention and keep it, there's an opportunity to make money. And that's why I think Swiftkey has been so successful in realizing that fundamentally they're dealing with hundreds of millions of people who could look for different ways to input on mobile devices, and then monetizing that could look different than it used to.
Interesting. A couple questions too, just I guess for Ruth, that have come up around differences between Android and iOS. What are you sort of seeing there, or do you just shifts along the way no matter what?
I mean, Android, we're very new in our iOS journey. You know, we're still in the learning stage of that. I think we've just been delighted to find that there's an audience there that wants a more personalized typing experience, because we're much newer to that. I think, you know, we've seen, I'm more familiar now with the Android model, and we have seen changes in that. We've seen this sort of evolution away from the principle of paid first apps into freer apps. On iOS, I think there is still a principle of paid apps. Most of our competitors have come into this space as a paid app, and we're going to see how that whole space evolves. I think for us, the platforms are very different, and the products that we've evolved are very different. People expect a different thing from the UI, they expect a different thing from the functionality. But underlying that, you know, many consumers are the same. They're motivated by the same thing. They want a better experience, and they want that great value driven for themselves. And I think that doesn't change by platform. I think the other thing that affects it is geography and market. And we're seeing some really exciting things happening in the emerging economies, where their adoption of smartphones is really going to maybe transform the ways that a lot of our charts work, and the winners and the losers in that space. We find that a really inspiring, motivating thing. We like disruption. We are disruptors. So I think that we see that as a very positive change.
And what's your business model on the iOS side?
We've launched as a free app. We chose to do that so that we could grow the user base. That's our #1 priority right now. And I think really, you know, the roadmap to come will speak for itself when version 2, version 3, version 4 arrive. But I think to look to what we did on the Android side, we decided to go as a free app, where all of the features and functionality were free, because I think that people are quite suspicious of the free model, where actually in order to do anything of value or of quality, you then have to pay up. So free doesn't end up being quite so free. But we introduced a Swiftkey store where we're selling free and premium themes, so people can choose that customization option. And we found that to be a very, very successful model for us on Android. And again, we're still at the beginning of our learning journey with our users about what kind of content they want to see there, and what the options are there. So I think as long as you're kind of open-minded and prepared to think about different ways to think about business models, then I think there are opportunities. On iOS, you know, we're 2 days in. So exciting times, but not all of the answers.
Stay tuned. Somebody asked too, and we might as well ask it, has Apple financed this app?
No, we finance our apps.
Right on. If you would have said, I can't answer that, then we would have wondered, but right on that you're doing it all yourself. That's good. So anyway, any other ways, any sort of tips you can give developers out there about how they can really grow that user base? Raj, what are some of the tips and tricks that you're using so you stay relevant in this app economy?
So I'm in the productivity category. So with Tempo,
A little bit different.
Very different. And a couple comments. So part of the reason we chose the productivity category was in building an app, you kind of I think of it as 2 categories. Either you're trying to replace an existing experience that's on the device and do it better. So Swiftkey obviously trying to replace the keyboard. Evernote is trying to replace the Notes app. Instagram replacing the camera app. WhatsApp with the messaging app. Or you are a companion app. You're another app or another experience. And there are pros and cons. When you're trying to replace an incumbent app that's preloaded on the device, the challenge being that how can you make sure they don't do you have enough parity with the native experience that they don't feel like they're missing something, so they want to go back? is it differentiated enough to get me to use it, etc. The pros are huge because if it is a core app of the phone, you use it every day. And with the Tempo users, we see them use it every day. I'm sure we don't have the daily sessions of a keyboard. That's probably a lot per day. But we'd get 4 or 5. Our average, I think, DAU, daily active, uses it 4 to 5 times a day. So it's pretty high engagement. And so that's why we sort of chose the productivity category. In terms of growth, what I have found in productivity to be most valuable is pervasiveness. And it's interesting because this is very different to how I would have, very different strategy and how I thought about things when I worked in the lifestyle category. And then prior to that, I worked in the utility category with a browser, trying to replace the browser, Skyfire, which is now part of Opera. In productivity, we find that people want to use the same experience on every screen. So everyone has more than one screen. They have their phone, maybe their laptop, maybe their tablet, maybe some other devices, whatnot. And if you use Gmail on one device, you kind of want it to be the same interface on every device. Even if the interface or experience might be slightly deficient or not as good, you just want the same fluid experience. That's what we have found. And so our path to growth and where we've been seeing growth has been through implementing Tempo across the vertical stack, not necessarily different platforms. We're not yet on Android, but let's just sort of saying doing the whole iOS stack. So Mac desktop client, destination website, iPad, iPhone, and that's where I think you start seeing some inflection points in growth. So I think it depends on the category, but in the productivity category, it makes a lot of sense to sort of make sure you implement the whole sort of vertical stack, the pervasiveness, because you do use these tools across all your screens.
Sounds good, Robi. Do you want to give any advice to going big? And somebody else is asking a question about how do you even get any sort of visibility on something like Google Play?
Yeah, so my number one piece of advice to anybody who asks me this question is stop thinking in terms of 3 months and getting featured in big hits, right? If that's the way you're thinking, you're screwed. And I see way too many people who assume that that's the route to success, but we've seen it over and over again, and this is also our philosophy as a company. What you're looking for is a core group of people who love what you're doing, who think your app is necessary on a regular basis, and figuring out what they care about, and then repeating it and finding more people like them. The app economy is about the fact that within 10 years, 6 to 7 billion people are going to be having smartphones, and that's going to be their primary connected device. And if you think about it that way, and you have a long-term perspective on building a loyal audience that loves your app, you're going to be successful. And if you're thinking about it in 3 and 6 months hits and getting to the top of the App Store, stop. Just quit.
Just go hang out at hackathons and eat free food.
Yeah, you might as well.
I think there's
Ruth, any...
to both sides.
What's that?
I said I think there's a little bit of truth to both sides of that. I mean, I think you still need some initial discovery.
Sure.
How people are aware of what you're building. Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that Robi mentioned the sort of community element. I think that's been massive for us. We've found those people who care and get what we do, and then every time we've got an update for them, they're ready to download and ready to go and evangelize for it. And I think we've been really into the low-cost ways of marketing, and that's sort of my area around how can you enable people to talk on your behalf? How can you enable them to go out into their environments and talk about you? You know, Swiftkey on Android went to #1 in 58 countries. We've not done PR and marketing in 58 countries. Our community has done that for us on our behalf. I'd also point out the value of the media. I'm an ex-journalist, so this is my kind of stock in trade, but you have to make sure that you fully understand the consumer problem that you're fixing, even if that's entertainment or whatever. You have to know what that is and be able to explain that and be able to then use the press to take that message more widely. And so focus on those influencers and make sure they have tested and understood your product.
Makes sense. So thanks. We said we'd do this in a half an hour, so this is really short and sweet, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, or give a big R, I think what we've agreed on, although I didn't necessarily want us all to agree, is app economy is not dead, but it really needs a good long-term view and people that take it seriously in terms of developers that are really going to create something that people need and really think about development over the long term. Sound about right?
Yeah.
Let me hear the R's.
Arr.
Well, thanks to Raj, Robi, and Ruth for joining us. Hope you guys had a good, short, and sweet time, and maybe next time we'll have to catch up on a little more detail around how that marketing and using the community can really work. And on that note, time to do a few more draws. Woohoo! So we've got one more ticket to give away to the Samsung Developer Conference. Again, that's November 9th. To the 11th to the 13th at the Moscone in San Francisco. So it's worth $500 plus, as we said. There's rumors that everybody who goes will get a device. So more than worth it. So we're going to give it to Mike Irving because he asked some good questions. So Mike, congratulations to you. You'll get the SDC pass, and Sam will be in touch in terms of how to get that. And then we have one more surprise prize to give away. We were in the Samsung office last week and got another one of these. Anybody see the gear? I love this, by the way. I wear it all the time, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. And somebody tweeting by the name of Kingdom of Ashish, the gear too is yours. Woohoo! So next show is going to be October 22nd. Not sure where any of us will be or what's on it. It's my birthday, though, so I'll be expecting some birthday wishes on that day. So tune in October 22nd. We'll send you out some information. And, I don't know if we did a great job of speaking like a pirate today, everybody, but it was sure nice to have you join us on this voyage, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.